Good.
We get that pretty
Oh,
good.
that is so good.
Oh my gosh. We get so easily spoiled. We're like one day of rain, we're like, oh,
I know, we can't survive.
Oh, it's weather.
It's on Ajax constantly.
Everything's like a chemical. Good. Yeah.
People just.
I saw there was a big business city grant, the energy grant, that just came out, like the
It's obvious
200,000
that they have a debt
for
project.
energy challenge.
Yeah.
I think that's
Open space.
Yeah, and then
Can't
climate
tell you all.
commitment for the year.
But if they move it back, if they move it back over the fence, then
Right.
It'll get cleaned up. If it's.
Did you guys applying for the chief sustainability position in Boulder? I saw that pop up in LinkedIn.
I
That's
know.
funny.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Not it. Who was the chief sustainability officer? Oh, it used to be
Yeah.
Dave.
Is it a husband
Yeah,
and wife?
But he
in the
did
60s?
both.
He's an older
He used to
guy,
do planning.
and,
Dave Driscoll was planning and sustainability,
Yeah,
so
I
they
know
broke
who
it
it
into
is.
two.
They
Wow.
must have.
They-
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because can you imagine trying to run a
Yeah.
sustainability program and
They're
planning?
obsessive.
Yeah, that sounds kind of
I
awful.
think they're leaders, but like,
They just throw
how
stuff
many
back
board
over.
meetings do you
We'll
go
get it.
to?
Yeah.
800 board
And then try to
meetings.
actually get something done on top of that.
Rearrange the drainage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, and sustainability is already a very broad
So they.
subject.
Right.
Full
It's
subject.
weird that they just call me.
Yeah, I'm glad they broke it down.
It was like
Yeah.
surprised that it wasn't.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that happened right after I took the job at the
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so we're fence out state.
Yeah, I'd already said yes.
In legislation.
Like, no, I know the odds of me getting that position was pretty bold or pretty low. I think
Looks like
gonna be
you don't
a-
want something on your
it's gonna
property,
be
put a
an
fence up.
insanely
Yeah.
competitive.
Yeah. We don't.
We had someone who we hired on as kind of like an entry-level researcher position, and they worked for us for like 2 months, and then finally got a job approval for a job offer from NREL, which is what they really wanted to. So then they dropped us after like 2 months, and we'll have to go to NREL. I was like, can't really blame you, but that sucks.
Yeah.
So
So-
I think Emerald's still around for.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone I know at Emerald is kind of like.
There's a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty well established.
Yeah,
case law.
that's-
I had some really awkward conversations recently at a couple conferences I was at with the Energy Star folks and various other people at the EPA.
But
So,
also the notion that the town or.
I work at
That's
Esource.
something illegal or property.
Yeah.
You, okay, great.
so yeah.
It's done,
Mhm.
but everybody does it.
Yeah. Do you guys have any open positions now? Because I do have a friend who's.
For some
Um,
reasons,
while.
it's fine. If
I don't know off the top of my head, but feel free to shoot me an email and I'll see if we have any
Over the RV
positions.
center, put them in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like
Compost
a
bin.
data analyst or something recently.
Yeah. I think we filled that position finally, but I don't know if there's something else that's
It's
still
kind of a
open.
drag when you hire someone to go through that process
Right.
in 2 months in there.
Yeah, that sucked a lot, but
That's kinda short.
he was super apologetic, but
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The
yeah.
the higher minded, more community oriented.
Do you know Beth Beckel? She's
Really?
She's still at Esource.
When did she go?
She had babies, so I don't
There's no
know
way.
the timing of.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I know
For
her.
them, it's
Yeah.
But
the
she was.
reservoir.
Sorry.
She
So.
was in our office.
Yeah, I
for a while.
remember
Oh, cool, okay.
There are folks, and I
Nice.
got pictures of them, they've sent me
Yeah.
pictures,
Yeah.
they're literally, they've got reservoirs.
Yeah.
Literally as high as the fence,
Yeah.
the tumbleweeds, absolutely.
Yeah, they were overseas for like 2
They
years.
push them out, we'll go get
Wow.
them.
Back.
George
Do you get, is it
They've done a lot.
high
That's a
pre-seasonal, is there a
busy
window
year.
when it's out, it's big time? or-
Yeah, no, she's Beth Fitzgerald, so it took me a second. I was like,
Right,
it
you're right.
sounds like our Beth, but yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I forgot
Like
about
my
that.
quorum, I guess,
Yeah.
huh?
For temporarily, just
Nice.
that month or whatever.
Welcome to our vast and expansive network of people.
Big quorum.
Yeah, exactly.
Zumba, then here. Okay.
Fence that runs south.
How's everything been going for you?
So.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Right.
actually really cool. It's not really stuff. We just won
Yeah, it's a lot
a
of
program
Okay.
for the city of New York.
Cool. That's awesome.
Is that going to be a game changer or what? All the big cities that are scared to go, New York's going to look at it. Hello.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know, what with the 6 foot
Oh,
fence?
yeah.
I didn't think you could
Yeah,
win
it's
it.
because they use the ones that connect them.
Congratulations.
Effectively,
Yeah.
the brains.
Yeah.
And some of them are just 6 feet tall.
I mean,
I'm really hoping we win this big. That's what I did in Ontario. I've been very I've been saying for years, it's a couple of
Is
years.
that ASO or?
Yeah, I guess it is.
Okay.
It's odd
Yeah.
that painting.
It's NEPS modeling and, coming up with a model for all the portfolio and.
Cool, okay.
I did in California many years ago and no one's.
Yeah, no one did anything with it, yeah.
Well, no, they used
At
it
least
for
the
over a decade,
Franco,
but no one
yeah,
else is
okay.
filming it.
Franco Iron Gate, keep us keeping that on my property.
I don't have tumbleweed.
Yeah, yeah, it's tall enough. And well, you're on the other side.
I got two
How
of
about you?
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been out at some conferences recently and stuff, so I'm finally back for a little while, which is nice.
Yes.
And just got lots of different roles at my current position, so trying to juggle all those things.
Where have you put conferences?
That's at the Emerging Technology Summit in California.
Really?
Just got like all the utilities. And then, so I spoke there, and then I was invited to speak very next week at the Missouri Advancing Energy in the Renewable Energy in the Midwest conference. So, yeah, running around.
I've had a lot of trash conferences lately.
Okay. Huh.
Monday I was in New Orleans, no, last week I was in, 2 weeks ago I was in New Orleans for Israel.
Uh-huh.
And last week I think I did a Chapel, and this week on Monday I was in New Orleans again
Okay.
for Waste Expo, and then yesterday, so one day there and then one day in Pasco, Washington.
Huh.
But you
Okay.
know, I lived in Richland for 5 years, and there was
Uh-huh.
never any kind of like release or anything. The very day I'm there, some nuclear waste tunnel collapses. And, there's an emergency. And
It's not my
whatever, but
question.
No one told me about it. I was in the town that was,
Great, yeah.
it's the Tri-Cities. I was in one of the Tri-Cities, not the one that was, closest, but not of, and I never trust the early reports out of anything out there.
Right, yeah.
They were just bullshit always, yeah. So
Mhm.
I hope it, after, surviving there so long, but anyway.
Yeah.
I was in that AC2 market transformation one. That was a real disappointment. It
Was
used
it?
to be a
Okay.
big conference, but it was, I couldn't find sessions I was interested in going to.
Really? Okay.
There weren't very many people there, definitely none of the, sort of gravitas people. It was,
Uh-huh. Huh. That's interesting to hear.
yeah, I think they've they have too many conferences. They need to go back to
That's
the few
kinda
so
what it
they can get
seems
some
like.
special.
Yeah.
There's the financing one, the wedding, back and.
Yeah. The flip side, I guess, the summer studies are getting so big now, they might have to move out of Solomar to somewhere even bigger. I have no idea where else they go, but
I don't know.
we'll see if that happens.
You can't make a pilot program.
I think it would lose something by going away from Solomon.
I think so
I think
too.
people look at that as
That would be
special.
my response.
Yeah. Really tough.
That's a
So.
good point, Sharon. Thank you.
Yeah, if that helps you with your reply.
And there are hotels in the nearby towns.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then they just have to use more of the rooms, I guess. Let's see. Do we have sessions in all the rooms? I don't know that we have sessions in all the
Feeling
rooms.
like we, I want to come to your meetings.
Yeah.
Oh, but I've got these other more important things I have to do.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah,
It would be
hopefully it
a-
stays there. That's my hope. We'll see.
I did the one in France a couple of times.
Really?
They
Okay.
also take over a campus, or they
Uh-huh.
did at the time, take over a thing. and
Sounds like
that
it'd
was
be
kind of,
cool.
Pretty near Cannes.
Okay, nice. Very cool.
It was pretty nice, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
But I went to like 3 or 4 maybe European conferences, and I stopped going because they never wanted any evaluation work.
Huh,
So it was a way,
That's
yes, I
interesting.
learned about the programs they had, but there was no work out of it, so it couldn't really make
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
Because they don't bother to evaluate the stuff like we do.
That's
They go,
interesting.
if that's a good sounding program, we the government are gonna buy fiat, put it in.
For the public hearing.
Okay, that's kind of how it goes. None of this analysis paralysis, but then again.
Right. Also verify that's actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Aware of them on the.
Yeah, so the,
I guess it might just be the two of us.
So maybe we should just write, is the main thing we have to do, write something here?
When did this get sent out?
Today.
Okay.
Today. I'm
I
not.
thought you had
I was,
sent out the emails, but
I was just
apparently
boom,
missed
boom,
that
boom
one.
things today. I had a webinar, I gave it 3 to, let's see, conference calls in the morning, conference call 1 to 2, nothing 2 to 3.
Mhm.
3 to 4, I gave a webinar on mercury thermostats.
This is not,
Okay.
this is.
4:15 to 5:15 was Zumba, and 5:30 to 6:30 is here.
Excellent. I used to take leave packs in.
Yes, the Zumba shirt is underneath.
Nice. Excellent.
Did the best I could. Don't look at the tennies. Okay.
But yeah, I feel like I'm working on a weird drainage problem at Folsom.
Handy analysis note.
Maybe your RDR line. Parking lot that's like flooding.
Links to find out where you are.
Mike. Pension's unable to come.
We had some good suggestions.
Did he?
I
Okay.
agree with pretty much all of it. One is just to go ahead and push the 2015 IECC instead of waiting for the 2019, because it looks like it's going to be too late, which I agree with.
Good idea.
Some ideas for topics for board dinner, sounds
The
good.
bus stop's probably my big project, but they.
That's you talking about Mike's email?
Yeah.
Like, well, yeah. But it's good, they're not like art school and stuff.
When did you send out the draft memo? I can't seem to find it in my email.
Earlier today.
Okay. Let's see.
So, like,
Should I be so happy? Can you
I,
forward it to them?
yes, I
I
can.
can't walk all the way across this road.
Oh, Martin.
It's too far away.
It's too far away. Oh, yeah, you did it as a separate. Where are you? Cover memo.
Other people
Oh, wait, yeah, that's you.
Mhm.
No, I got
Realtors,
it.
God, they are good. I don't think I'm gonna do this one. This one doesn't sound good. Self-employed, Golden Distributors, Greater New York City area. I don't know.
There you go. Cool, thanks.
You're looking for conferences to go to?
No, that's some LinkedIn guy, you know,
Oh.
oh, please, guy, link in.
So it's funny, so a couple of people that used to work at eSource are now off doing cannabis-related things for various
Doing what
reasons.
kind of things?
Cannabis.
Oh, yeah.
And
okay.
so now, because I'm like, I have a couple of cannabis-related connections inadvertently, then everyone else in the entire, like, apparently there's a really strong, like, LinkedIn cannabis network, and so I
Oh,
keep getting
boy.
all these requests for people. I'm like, no, I don't, why would I connect with you?
That's really
That's not
funny.
really my thing, but yeah.
You're like, I'm working on federal grants now.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking
Talking about BPA is always hilarious, because Washington's, you know, fully legalized, and BPA can't touch it because they're federal. So it's like a massive source of energy consumption, and they can't address any of it.
Either.
So,
Huh. Oh wait, no, I have the one that you sent to me. That's the draft. Oh, there it is. Oh, here's the draft. There it is.
Okay.
It's just
I
highlighted.
did not print that out.
oh yeah.
Didn't print that out?
I did not print that out.
Well,
and
that's
I'm
all right,
sorry
with just
about
two
that.
of you here, I think we'll be able to.
No, that's
Fill 'em
actually a
in.
problem.
One of you can be right and one of you can be left. So it's almost coming up on quarter till, so.
Anything
go
in
ahead
that,
and get
anything
started.
with those white letters, I can never read it from far away.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Black I can read, but white I
Highlight it
can't.
to black.
What?
Highlight it and make it all black then.
Oh, that will help if you just.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think if you just highlight all the grids, you can look at the text black.
sorry. Old eyes, I apologize.
Oh, that's all right.
I see what's
It's probably
written.
all of us, you're just the one.
ESSIES@gmail.com. Yeah, thanks.
There you go. Thought I had it in here, but I think it's because I sent it. Now you have my new contact.
Sounds good, thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, that really helped.
Sure. Yeah, that is easier to read.
Yeah, I don't know why the default table was white.
I was
Did
over
that.
explaining it, like, you know, that's much easier.
Go.
That's fine.
We all have old eyes.
Some of us older than others. So it's quarter till, so, you know, not
Yep.
your guys' time, I'd like to get started.
Yep,
If
sounds
there's
good.
Anybody who can get here and catch up.
No
The
quorum.
only other member that I heard from was Michelle. She called this afternoon to say that she would be here.
Oh.
She
Okay.
was in the middle of 3 or 4 different things, and I asked her to just take a quick glance at the emails, and then she said she'd have to leave at 6:30, but hopefully
Fine.
she'll have a.
Might be tough.
Might be tough. So
Yep.
if you want to go ahead and get started, we can.
Sure, sounds good.
Go through, touch on a couple of the agenda. So new business, the newsletter items, not going to spend too much time on these, but several of the ongoing items are mentioned in this month's newsletter. Did a garage sale a couple weeks ago, which was great.
Is that organized by one?
It's a, remember, well, it's the town partnering with Coldwell Banker Realtor, real estate broker, yeah. Karen. She's been coordinating with us for at least 10 plus years. And the point was to have, rather than having multiple garage sales with multiple signs and multiple trips every weekend, was to focus on having a date when you we can have over 100 garage sailors participating at once to get more bang for the buck for those participating, and then get more customers, ideally for the folks that are interested in participating. So it's been a constant here for as long as I can remember. The vacancy on this particular committee I noted. This letter again, the transit options, bike to work days also highlighted. The irrigation audits through CRC, and bike to work day. Bike to work day is going to be June 28th. Get a chance to get out and try getting around, not using vehicle, and the outdoor irrigation audits with Center for Resource Conservation. Thank you. There's also a note in here, Commuting Solutions, the Regional Transportation Management Organization, is promoting the electric bicycles in the communities in which they are legal, including Superior.
Legal where? I mean, legal how? On the streets, on the railroad? Thank you. Thank you.
What's the jurisdiction? I think it's Westminster and Superior, are the two in the corridor that do have specific ordinances that allow the use of e-bikes on trails.
Huh. So, I never thought about that, but I guess that makes sense.
Not quite.
Yeah.
And then the Lawnmower Exchange Program, another great program coordinated through, I think it's REQC, and then our ongoing items, the yard waste services. So the yard waste site, if you haven't had a chance to get over there, is kind of wrapping
awesome.
up construction.
Oh, good.
There isn't the kiosk there yet, but if you haven't had a chance to go over there, it looks awesome. Did you have
Yeah,
a
it
chance
looks
to go
great.
over there, Elise?
I did.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
it was great.
Mhm.
So we talked a little bit about promoting that, and then Jim, you and I talked briefly about coordinating some promotion to remind folks with this initiation of irrigation and landscape season to try and coordinate. So we'll work on an e-blast probably, and I'll send that to you if you want to incorporate it in your June newsletter as well. Windy trash days, and the bulk item discard, and then the do-good items. I was remiss this month, and I didn't include the link that was in last month's newsletter or in the pros newsletter on the dog waste pickup. There was a great video that the park staff had worked on last month. It was in there. It was on the website. It was on in the pros newsletter, but I slipped right out of my mind when we were working on the regular newsletter. So those are the highlights from the newsletter.
Martin, real quick on the, if you don't mind, on the lowdown pollution, I brought some nice posters.
Awesome.
Would you have any interest in posting them?
Sure, I'll be glad to.
There's two of them, so that town hall and whatever.
Thank you.
Location, but that's
Sure.
really great.
I'll ask Patrick to put it up
Opportunity
across the
for
street.
residents to save a lot on either swapping from a gas commercial electric or getting, if they're getting a new mower.
Yeah, thanks for bringing those. We've had a lot of participants in the past. I think Michelle was talking about this last month, that she'd participated in it and had a great experience. Oh wow, speak with Michelle, there she is. So events recap. So the Household Hazardous Waste and Hard to Recycle event was a few weeks ago, and it turned out great. Thanks so much to Lisa and to Michelle, right on cue. Hi, Michelle. So at the event, Michelle and Lisa were kind enough to come over and help us with the kind of entry.
We were the chatty
gatekeeper.
Cathy's entertaining them while they waited
Yes,
in line.
I know. You can only stand in the street and entertaining so many people as they drive by with VCRs to try and offload. But thank you very much. I know it's a long couple hours and it can be a little draining. And then Mike Henshin was nice enough to go over and man the booth, man the table at the Arbor Day new park dedication for Wildflower Park. So it was a busy morning over there. So there were 205 people that we had tracked coming in, which was great. It was more than we did the year before last, which was 180. I want to say
Good.
188.
Okay.
185-ish.
Well, was it the weather was the last year?
We didn't do it last year because it got snowed out.
It got snowed out, so they had
So
to
in
50% of last year's
2015,
people.
Yeah.
I bet you were comparing to last year's count, but
the last time we had a count.
last time.
Yeah,
Quick
sorry.
question, how many 50% off vouchers were there?
Yeah, exactly.
That were used?
No, that were available for people to pick up, just curious. So for the year we had to cancel, so 2016 when we had to cancel, how many 50% off vouchers were there?
There were as many as people wanted to do. It was in our newsletter every month for 9 or 10 months.
Wow.
That's really weird because lots of people said that they couldn't get a voucher. Like I had at least 5 people say
No, it was a, it
they
was
were
a
told
link
the
in the
vouchers
newsletter.
were unavailable.
And then I would leave them out here, and the same stack of little, it was a printout of what was in the newsletter was available out here, and there was the same stack there for month after month.
Huh, that's really interesting. We'll have to
Mm.
talk about that later, but yeah, that isn't
Yeah, it's
really
unfortunate
in
somebody thought
line
they
with
actually
what
had to
I was
get
being
a-
told by people there.
The point was to have it be digital, and have it be a link in the, maybe there was some language that I had in the verbiage that didn't make
Yeah,
sense.
people
to
said
me.
they tried to come here and claim one, and there were none available. And we're not talking like 9 months after. We're talking like within the same time frame of the original event being scheduled type thing.
So, yeah, some kind of communication breakdown, because I printed off 40 or 50, and the same 40 or 50 were there for months. Right, but, right here on the desk.
Yeah.
Cool.
Huh.
Mm.
But no, that's
There were
good.
definitely some people who used it. It wasn't as extensive as, it wasn't 200 people the way it actually went to the event a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm.
But it was, I think it was in the dozens, not in the hundreds, which was good. But like we heard when we were processing folks at the intake time, people hold on to this stuff and they will not drive over to 63rd Avenue. It was, because we had a chance, because the line was backed up to chat with people about some of their experiences and what they would do if they had material that they had been holding on to. And there were some really interesting things that people brought. And so
really
there's just an
were.
opportunity to say, how long have you had this? Have you ever considered going over to Recyclers Row and dropping off some of these materials? And a couple of people were like, oh, well, yeah, I've been there, but I just didn't feel like it, or, I knew you were going to have this.
Or
And
like
a
me,
couple
who
of people were
completely
like-
forgot about it and had just taken a whole vehicle load the week before.
Yeah.
And paid for it.
What about the people who are still waiting for curbside pickup?
Hey,
We
they-
haven't done it in like 4 years.
They did exist, actually. They very much did exist. Probably get another 5 for me.
I mean,
Going, what happened to that?
Curiosity, how many like non-flat screen TVs? I mean, are you still getting the?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of people dropping off. It seemed like TVs and old computer monitors,
Yeah, right.
the fat one, non-flat ones.
Right.
The heavy
And just a lot of TVs. It was just a year for, some years it's a lot of paint, some years it's a lot of things that are the kind of the hazardous or the household materials management side. It was definitely electronics and small appliances, I guess. And mattresses. It was funny how many people came with
Good
mattresses.
Lord, that was a bad
I counted
one.
at least 7 or 8.
Did we actually accept mattresses?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that would be my personal feedback. So here's Lisa and I checking in people, but we actually have no list of what is allowed and not allowed.
Oh, that was more than a little annoying.
Yeah,
I
she's
was
actually very
peeved.
right. Because then the guy comes almost towards the end of the event from the collection side and personally, I'm just going to say berated us over the fact that we were allowing these people in with scrap metal. It's like there was nobody to tell me we didn't take this. You know what I mean?
And
my-
our life revolves around the Charm Center, and we already have it committed to our memory exactly what they take a Charm.
But Charm does take
But God, I don't live around
But
Charm.
Charm does take scrap metal.
Okay.
So that's the whole thing.
Well, then even so, then
Yeah,
even more so.
So that's in my head, I'm like,
I
well,
don't
whatever
live
Charm
around there.
accepts,
Yeah.
like, they'll take, and then we suddenly get yelled at by the guy who's like, but we don't take these and we don't take this, and I'm like, but nobody told me, so I don't know. So that would be my only feedback, like a little concise list for the people checking in.
Sure.
Because we
Charm
definitely
has
do
a
get
great
asked by
list
the
on
people
their
going up,
website
like,
what they
do you
take.
take this? Do you take that? And we're
I
like,
did my best judgment.
and we would always say, well, I know I always,
So
like,
shoot
I know
me
you
for it,
use your
yeah.
judgment, and I would just always say, well, you're going to have to ask them up front.
Yeah. Sorry.
And the flip side of that is most people had multiple things. So
Yeah,
it-
but
it
I
was-
would have known if they had, some had scrap metal, and that was all.
Mhm.
So.
Favorite guy was still
Yeah.
the dolly
What
with
was
the big
thing? It was those
TV.
big gas thing, what are they called? Grills.
Yes.
Grills. Like 3 or 4 people had just grills.
No, there was a guy that walked from his house with a
With a
dolly
garage.
with a large TV.
That was
on
entertaining.
it. That was
We
very
let him go to the
entertaining.
crocodile.
We did. We thought he got a cut.
Martin, you mentioned paint. And it's just, isn't the law, now there's a law that the stores have to accept the return
Mhm.
of paint.
Yeah, just paint stewardship.
Have we ever publicized that?
Mhm.
Stores? So
In-
like
in
the
the
hardware
news- you put it
stores
in
have
the
to do with
newsletter.
it?
Yeah, it was state legislation, last year? I think it went into effect last 2 years.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so
really
when
cool.
New state legislation came into effect a
Right.
couple of Julys ago. a
save
statewide
me a
program
trip,
was initiated. and we
which I
publicized
always
it.
go on a Monday
Put in the newsletter,
when they're closed.
because if you could send, that's something we
Sure.
could put in the HO.
Yeah, and then the household materials management folks, Shelley Fuller's group, had also publicized that and had a great flyer. I think we probably just used theirs. Yeah, I can send that to you.
Add that to your list.
I know, I got my separate gym list over here.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting ready to introduce whole new paint schemes and everything, so we'll put that in at the same time.
So thanks for the feedback on the events. They're always a good time. It is a little bit of a there's definitely a gray area on some of the items they take, because like you mentioned, they do take scrap metal at the site. And one gentleman carried over a garage door opener, which in my mind is more motor than metal. But when he went up there, he was told, no, they can't take it because it was too much. It was more metal than motor.
Because it was like 50% or something.
Yeah, was that what he had
Some
told
lame
us?
judgment.
It was one of those.
That's interesting.
No.
I
Well,
thought we're just saying that they take metal, but I thought metal was.
Again, we were very like,
We were not
at
briefed.
a mobile event like
Adequately.
this, they're a little more selective, perhaps, than what they take
It
at the
was like-
site itself.
I thought you said they went up.
Charm.
No, to us.
Oh.
I watched a guy come up, Soapers, he had this, it was an entire garage door opener, a long stem, yeah, and the chain, the whole thing. He walked all the way up, I told him, yeah, sure, and then he had to come back.
oh no, you serious?
It was
You had to
nice.
walk
Yeah,
all the way
yeah,
back
home.
with the garage door opener?
Yeah, he had to go all the way back to the garage.
Oh, no.
That's awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had the garage.
I know, but it's, again, it's tricky because when you get told
Yeah,
that
there's something
what
else.
charm takes, you can bring there and then get told,
That's crazy.
yeah.
And he had to walk back home.
Yeah, that seemed a little nebulous. I mean, I'm glad they do it, and I'm not going to argue with them, but
Well, I guess that's
for-
the question. If you do something really ambiguous, you should drive your booty over to Charm and ask him in person.
Well, or if they're gonna do these on-site events and it does drift that much from what they'll accept at the site, they need to provide us with a concise list of what they accept on site.
That'd be good.
And that's very easy for us to
Honestly.
advertise
yes.
that, and it would be no question. I mean,
And
I'd
we
be-
could have it.
And we could have it, and I'm like, I'm even happy to do something, I mean, there's lots of teens who need money to earn. It's like, you can even probably tie it in with some side collection, like, if you don't fit into this, but that's a whole different story. Just tell them to
Yeah,
provide
there's
us
just
with
a
a
lot of
concise
nebulous
list of what
areas.
they'll do at the drop-off
The
sites, and that'll work.
EcoCycle folks do a great job on their website. They have a really long list of what they take and how much it costs, and a lot of exhaustive detail, but there's always going to be that one thing. You know, who would have thought garage door opener?
No, but it wasn't even those one thing, because Martin, things that they would accept on site, they weren't accepting at ours.
Mhm.
And that's not how it was advertised, and that's not our fault, that's their fault.
Mhm.
So,
Yep, I get it.
anywho.
It was a small thing. Most people were happy.
It is.
Most
The
people were
vast
very
majority of
happy.
people were happy.
And
And they
it
all
was-
said, if you didn't have this, we'd hold on to the next
Yes,
time.
it
you
was
did.
amazing how many times. Lisa and I were actually comparing notes, because I think it was 7 or 8
I
people.
added some, yeah.
Before you and I actually talked to somebody who said they would actually
That brought
go
it-
over to Recyclers Row. It became, it was almost a, can you find somebody who isn't going to keep this in their basement for an interminable amount of time? And we should have given them a lollipop or a sticker or something.
Yeah.
Some sort of reverse
That would work.
incentive.
No longer a hoarder stickers.
It's a badge of honor.
Exactly.
That'd be good.
I've grown as a person.
I've graduated from a, yeah. What do they call
Title superiors made me a better
level
person.
5 order is to a level 4 order, yes.
Oh, the creative ideas just never end with this group. Thank you so much. So the new park dedication and Arbor Day celebration went really well. Mike's not here, but I appreciate him making the time to hang out over there. The advisory committee open house was April 26th. And this is, again, one of those items that came out of the board's reconfiguration of the ordinance associated with the advisory committees, was to host spring and fall open houses. And this was another one in which there were no citizens. So this is something that I spend the time to be here to open the doors. And there were several committees that were, or there were 2 committees that were here, OSAC and CAPSAC, the Cultural Arts Group, were here, but none of the other groups. So they didn't miss out. You didn't miss out on anybody. I was ready to
I'm
chat with
sorry.
anybody who was interested in
No one has to
in
ask
RCAC.
for it, it's just supposed to be like a drop.
It is, and there have been a couple where there have been a few folks come by, but there have been several with none.
Well, good luck.
So I want to say maybe 3 out of the last 4 or 2 of the last 3. So July 4th is coming up, so I wanted to give you a quick heads up and see if there was going to be somebody who wanted to be available to staff a booth at the event.
I'm
and
gone
hand
by
out.
then.
You're gone by then? I know. The island calls Lisa. Lisa's gone.
What time is it again?
9. The parade's at 8. The pancake
Oh, July 4th, we're
extravaganza
not here. We're gone.
it starts around 9.
Yeah.
I might be able to do it, so you can put me down as maybe.
Put you down as a maybe?
Yeah.
Besides, my goal at a 4th
I'll
of
be
July
there.
event is not to be the booth person. Mine is to be the cotton candy lady. I want to be the cotton candy lady some years.
We combine those two?
I
That'd be
love
excellent.
cotton candy.
Why can't we have the cotton candy?
You can hand out
That's
the
a great
bags and
idea.
cotton candy.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. we're gonna be
Have
gone.
trash and candy.
Waiting for the rest of
I
them.
don't know what our plans are yet, but I might be a maybe as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll check in with you next month. Committee reappointment schedule. So all the committee's members have their terms go 3 years, and then the June to July is the ending time to the renewal time. So the 3 spots that are open with this year's 3 are Kim and Colleen, and then Joe's spot, the vacancy. So all of you all don't have to tell me.
So I don't have to re-up
No.
this time? Okay.
No,
I
it's
thought it was
3 out of 9 every year on a staggered
Sorry, tell me
annual
what
schedule,
about-
3, 3, 3 every 3 years.
So we have one that's currently open,
We
and
do.
then 2 more will come open.
So can they start
No.
advertising that as 3 then?
No, there are not 3 openings. If I apologize if I'm misstated. The folks who are eligible for reappointment
Ah,
are Kim and Colleen. Neither of them this was not the end of anybody's second term.
Oh,
okay.
Nobody's come to the
But-
end of their second term.
okay. So I guess the reality is though, can we find out from Kim or Colleen what their intentions are ASAP?
Sure.
So we can put it as 1, 2, or 3 accordingly in the newsletter?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, that'd be
But,
helpful.
yeah, if they're.
If we know
we
they're
got
not gonna
nobody
re-up.
showing up. I guess I need to get my husband to apply or something, huh?
So I need to know by the end of the month, because right now the board's scheduled to consider appointments of current and potentially additional committee members at their June 12th meeting. So I'll be in touch with them in the next week or so and see if they're going to be, if they think they'll be available. Kim's been kind of hit or miss. I think she's got some new job responsibilities. And then Colleen just emailed this afternoon. I think she replied to an email to the whole group. She just said she was working tonight. So I think she plans to be involved. But I'll confirm with both.
I think she seems committed. Life changes.
Next is the budget schedule. Like you all have heard me many times for many years now. We spend a lot of time and energy and staff time and horsepower working on our budget, and it's an all-year process. This year's process, like most years, the preliminary budget requests are due to the Internal Budget Review Committee in June. June 16th, I believe, is the date that we have to have our operating and capital budget requests assembled and forwarded. So this is a reminder last month I gave you, and usually during the May meeting and the June meeting, try to finalize where the group is going to land, if there are any changes to what you're interested in recommending based on items that you're interested in recommending the board consider. So the items that were recommended last year, I have up on the screen just as a refresher. With your good eyes, the items the group was interested in continuing to have in the budget for this year, this 2017 budget, continue to support the dog waste compost program, landscape education, the Xeric outreach materials to distribute at community events. That's the bags that we had last year. We got again this year, the reusable shopping bags. The exploring options to coordinate with the Rock Creek Master Homeowners Association to host a bulk item pickup event, which is at least partially funded by participants. This was an ad that the group wanted to put in.
Keep that in.
During the consideration of a final recommendation last June. And then contracted staff resources to coordinate and promote conservation-related programs and activities in the community. Ooh, that's a mouthful. So those were the priorities from last year's budget. And then in the work plan this year, I think it was those items as well. I don't need to go over this.
Sustainability grant, Matt, is that a separate item from this, right?
Yes. Yeah, these were the individual items that the committee was interested in advocating, specifically either be added or maintained. But the list of programs that you're familiar with, those are ongoing budgeted programs that if they were to ever change or be eliminated, I guess we'd want to come back and get some feedback from the committee. But at this point, those annual budgets are fairly set as ongoing programs. So that's the last reminder. So next month we'll try and hopefully have quorum to have a budget recommendation. If not, it'll be just acclamation or agreement on behalf of the group.
And that has to be which month?
June 16th, next month.
Ooh.
June?
Who's going to be gone then? I will.
June 16th?
You should maybe ask in advance, because if we can reschedule the meeting
What?
to make quorum, that would be
Is it June
a good thing.
Is that our meeting?
I think the meeting for this group is June 8th. but
Okay.
The
Okay.
budget submittals are due
June
the
8th?
following week.
Okay, good. I'll leave the next day. No, 2 days later.
So yeah, I'm saying June 16th because that's my deadline.
Okay.
Your deadline, you're not deadline, but the date that you're meeting is June 8th. So that
Okay.
would be the time when there's hopefully an opportunity to have, well, quorum would be great, but at least agreement on what would be any new or different priorities from the group on what you'd like to be considered in the 2018.
Because they seem to
budget.
be accepting as close as we can get to quorum. Is
Oh,
that your
yeah.
comment?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
We've made, well, the group, the committee has agreed on what the priorities are in the past, not necessarily with quorum. The group can agree to something for the folks who are here. It's
Okay.
just not going to be a formal
Good.
recommendation.
Okay.
We can be flexible.
Good.
So come with ideas for next month, and I'll again put a reminder in the meeting notes this month. All right, then the 2 discussion items, if there weren't any other new business or update items that I missed, check my notes. I'm sure there's something I forgot. My separate gym list. That's it. All right, so the 2 items that the group had tasked for discussion and trying to nail down closer to final, preparation for the May 22nd dinner session with the town board. So this, like the last 5 or 6 years, the group has had a chance to sit down in a formal work session and have dinner with the elected officials, which is a great time like you've seen in the past or you've participated in the past. When you talk over fajitas about stuff that's going on, it's just a different dynamic.
Martin loves fajitas.
Yep.
Yeah. That's funny. So Lisa and Michelle have been here enough years to know that every year that I'm going to get fajitas. I'm very predictable in some ways. And then also that night, it was kind of a quirk of schedule, but hopefully it made sense to, rather than have members of the committee make time on separate nights, to have the presentation of the sustainable commercial building options on the same night. So there's an opportunity to talk about the sustainable commercial building options in some detail during the dinner, or whatever else the group is interested in talking to the board about, and then having a presentation, the presentation that y'all have worked on that Essie finalized with Sharon's graphics. Appreciate your time and effort on
And
that.
Essie's in charge of presenting, right?
Well, the whole group obviously would be more than welcome.
I'm planning to present, so.
Good.
If anyone else wants to jump in, feel free, but otherwise, I'm happy to do that.
It's your
Group
job.
efforts are always welcome, always work well.
Interpretive dance.
Maybe some instruments.
Just the peanut gallery.
Uh-huh.
I get totally nervous.
The interview process, I think, was one of the most nerve-wracking things I've ever done with the, yeah. We were talking about how it's awkward to present here. Probably
is
just
awkward?
because the layup.
I
and
get
stuff,
nervous
but-
here.
Yeah.
I give international keynote speeches, not a problem.
It's
Cannot do
hilarious.
this.
With this
I
room?
cannot do this
It
room.
is.
Yeah,
we got
something
a
about
new
the room is
podium
just-
last year, Lisa.
The what?
The new podium?
But it's like off to the side.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Is it, you mean just because of the room?
That makes all the difference. I think it's
It's on
people
wheels, you can move
waiting to
this
jump
down.
on you.
Wheel it as you talk.
I like to make it into the hall. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That was great.
That was awesome.
It's all good.
Anyway, so yeah, so
Sorry.
I'm happy to do the podium
We'll
presentation.
shut you up, not me.
No pressure, no pressure.
Yeah, but feel free to come and, hang out and encourage the
Yes.
town board to do stuff.
Go Essie.
Palms are welcome.
Yeah, I can find some of that. I can help you out. Like I said, I never throw anything away.
There you go.
So I don't know how to segue, but I've got to give it a shot. So there's 2 items. So the dinner session, and I was looking through the last couple of years. It's generally what the group has talked about are items from the work plan. And last year, Lisa, you were kind enough to put together a matrix of some of the ongoing projects. I don't recall the board spending a lot of time on it, but it was good information. I'm glad you said it. But it was a nice handout to have. But what we've done in the past is talk about the trash and recycling contract was a topic that the group spent a lot of time on with the board 2 years ago. And then some other maybe high-level items that were high on your radar that you wanted to talk about with the elected officials over the last couple of years. And I look back at last year's notes and it was the same kind of thing, talking about the yard waste site
So we should
and
give
PACE
them
program
some
and
kudos
some
for
other
that.
things.
Yeah, but,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a good point, even though, yeah, it is a good thing to be done.
Yep, kudos for that.
So we talked last month about potential topics. So if there's anything you're interested in including specifically, awesome, let me know or bring it up, or I can just put the work plan up on the wall again. And then if there are some topics that the committee's interested in, or the board is interested in having the committee talk about, it's kind of the opportunity.
Have you sent us the trash tonnage stuff, data?
Have I sent you the trash tonnage stuff?
I haven't seen it.
Probably not. I haven't had a chance.
If you could
to
do
look.
that, that would be great.
Sure.
And so at least before the meeting, we can have some
Mhm.
idea where we are, and
Just keep on pinging on
we
that.
have comparison for the surrounding communities, so I can bring that, I can make a little graph.
Yeah, that would be great. You've mentioned that at least 2 months ago, Lisa, and
I know.
I haven't had a chance to get to it.
I didn't say that, you said it.
Oh, no.
Do we know how many people in Superior did the Garden in a Box program?
Well, the 50 that the town sponsored are I know about. There's probably
Yeah.
other folks that participated that.
But our
didn't.
50 were snatched up?
Oh yeah,
How quick?
pretty quick. Like
I got
before
one.
they were all pre-sales.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
No, but
the-
no, I mean, like, yeah, it'd be interesting, like, hey, from the time we announced the pre-sale, it was a week or something like
But
that.
also, like,
No, it was
That's
all
good.
within
Yeah.
that month.
knowing like how
Okay.
many used vouchers, but then on top of that, how many more people from our water district did that. I
Mhm.
think then we could evaluate for next year, like, do we want to ask for more vouchers or?
Yeah.
I think we've always, like, topped, I think it's a really good question. As
Yeah.
far as I know, we've always topped out on vouchers, so I think asking for more is a very reasonable
Yeah.
I
thing.
think that'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most
It's
people
really
just
cool.
don't.
People to write in
I like
notes saying
it.
how much they liked it.
Yeah, oh, that's a good one, yeah.
I like
I
it
just,
a lot.
I've never used it because we
Tell
have
your
a
friends to
big
write
garden
emails to the
area,
town
but
board.
I think it's an awesome program.
Mhm.
Definitely. And the stuff survives. I can attest to the fact that it's still there, despite virtually no maintenance on it. Yes, special attention.
Yeah, it's been nice that it's rained all week to
Yeah.
get mine going.
It's awesome.
I'm not a
From
gardener.
a legal standpoint too, if you want any county data on residents who participated in Energy Smart or businesses in these, could you give us that?
Sure, that would be great. Yeah, so Lee didn't go to the microphone, but for the benefit of anybody watching, she'll be kind enough to pass along folks who participated in the PACE or Energy Smart programs. Appreciate that, Leah. Thank you. I know you don't want to get up either. Okay.
Have we had a lot of participation from Superior, or is it pretty minimal, just anecdotally?
On me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that'd be great to have. We can have maybe just a few data points rather than the 4 pages that Lisa put together last year.
Sorry.
I thought it was
Scroll.
great.
You're a chunk full of information, you want to give it all, and I think that's awesome. But obviously, some people can't
You never
handle
know.
the full truth.
You
so-
never, well, and you never know which one they'll hit on, and so if you
Mhm.
don't include that one, then
Right.
they'll say,
Yeah.
well, where's that?
I'm just like you, don't worry.
Well, because it is an informal kind of dialogue, maybe having some flexibility like that works. It's going to kind of go where it goes. But if there are specific topics that the group would like to have included, I can include that on the agenda that is posted. And then when the mayor kicks off the meeting, there's at least a couple of topics that the group is specifically interested in. So if there are those, so
I
I
think the
heard
more
yard
we can
waste
talk
site.
about what we're going to talk about later that night,
Mhm.
the more we can abbreviate the discussion during the night is always a plus.
I agree.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So if we can focus them, I think that would not be a bad thing.
Yeah. I do
Yeah,
agree.
so it's a fortuitous circumstance to have the dinner the same night as the presentation. So
Oh,
you have
yes.
that first hour.
That was nicely done. Thank you.
Mhm.
That first hour, you can maybe get into some of the detail that's not in the presentation. So you can maybe delve into some of the deeper detail, and then maybe keep it a little briefer during the session.
That sounds promising.
So
Get everyone really excited about IECC 2015.
as if they could be more excited.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so that's the dinner session. And then for the presentation itself, so just to refresh your memories, because I know it's not at the top of everybody's mind, the presentation that Essie worked on behalf of the group was in a final format. I hadn't heard anybody, so I think we'd sent this out with last month's meeting notes
Yeah, I
or
think
meeting
it's pretty much
agenda.
final.
And then
Yeah.
the graphics that Sharon put in, and then I had just a couple of tweaks to one of these pages.
Yeah, and those all look good to me.
And then, so this is the last version, so ask board to require. So this would have been the final version, so we'll have this.
Which they seem to like.
And then there was a recommendation to have just an image of the sustainability options list as the last page on this. Last month I had that as a note from Lisa last month. So I'll add that to this final page.
Cool.
So that's the presentation item. So dinner topics list, and then narrow discussion. So my note to myself. So narrow the discussion to a recommendation, and then provide some narrative for the memo.
Just flash it really quick between each line.
Through the whole thing.
So Essie, here's the final version that the group landed on for the list itself.
Excellent.
So the presentation, and then this for the folks who are interested in
Should
the
we go
detail.
ahead and update the date at the upper left-hand corner?
Yeah.
We've been working on this for a really long time, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad, I see. I'm sorry.
I just think it's funny.
It's just that good, Essie.
Good catch.
It's just that
Just
good.
that good.
Yep, exactly.
So in the time that the group has remaining, I'd like to suggest that you narrow down to a recommendation. And then I started a cover memo kind of last night, trying to capture a little bit of the narrative without an exhaustive amount of detail on what each of these 4 things is. And then I left a space here for what the committee would like to recommend. So I'd like to try and narrow your discussion down to a recommendation, and then find somebody who's interested in providing some narrative for the memo, because this needs to go to the board next Tuesday, so I need it by Monday.
Okay.
So that's why I got started a little early.
You can never start early enough for this.
It's not the day before it's due, so I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed. It's got to be left-handed.
Yes, that's exactly it. So I get the presentation as an attachment, and then the options list. So I think, after when you synthesize this down, the objective for the group.
Because this is the memo, with the memo, so they're having a side discussion
So
here
it's-
about score sheets.
All right, but then these things are.
So
wait,
the
is
memo
there-
doesn't include
So
the score
here,
sheet as an
done.
example.
No, that is the score sheet.
So the score sheet is the attachment?
No, that's what they're just asking.
You're talking about not the.
Oh, yeah, the
Score
the
sheet. That's for
feasibility chart, I'm sorry.
Yeah, matrix.
This one.
Yes.
That's supposed
So-
to be attached because that's how you're going to base your recommendation and put in the memo. They don't get to see your score sheet, that's your feedback.
Unless you want to.
Unless, yeah.
No, that's what they were just talking about, so I just thought I'd fill you in on their side discussion. So are you okay with that just being for us then? Is that the whole point?
I think having it in our hip pocket if demanded, but otherwise, no, I wouldn't overly complex,
Yeah.
we'll get edits to it and,
Yeah, so that for our side is perfect, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Wordsmithing, oh God, yeah. Don't want to go down that path.
It'll depend on what mood I'm in. Okay. So
So-
I answered their question on that.
It
so.
actually, and I'm gonna claim denseness, because I didn't get a chance to read this, I only got a chance to print it out. So I thought tonight we were going there with what Essie tells me is the pilot program, or the optional voluntary score thingamajiggy. I didn't realize we were going with other things too, so I apologize for having missed that.
Well, that might have
I
been my
missed it too.
denseness, but I've understood that since last year, you all were interested in
We are.
recommending the 2-prong program, which
I
included the
love it.
voluntary,
I'm
and
very
then also
happy.
the mandatory.
I thought that got chucked out the window, so I'm very happy about it.
Nope.
Okay.
It's up to you if you want to chuck it out the
I
window.
don't
you
want to
can.
check it out the window.
Here,
I
I will give
understood I was
you the
being
mouse.
too demanding, and I didn't want that, so.
Yeah, this is basically, we're approaching it as like a short-term pilot that we can implement immediately, and then kind of longer-term solutions.
Great.
And making the board aware that we're looking into different options and looking
Cool.
at feasibility and all that stuff. So we can kind of hopefully push them in the right directions.
And what are we asking for out of these other ones? We're asking for I mean, is there an answer we wouldn't like out of it, that we don't want to pose the question? I mean, I don't mean to be dumb, but, I mean, if we just want to study it some more, or if we think we want to, anyway.
If we think we want, just finish your sentence.
I'm just trying to say, do we want, what if we say, here's our recommendation, we want to study this one or that one or whatever. What if they say no to all of them? Is that an answer? So do we even want to ask the question?
I see what you're saying.
Well, maybe if the answer is none of these, then it's a direction to consider an alternative or a hybrid.
Yeah, so what would you rather see? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. If not this, then what? And then come back with some additional options.
And put them on the spot?
You'll never get anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if we're not saying implement these, if we're just saying, so are we saying?
I see what you're saying.
Are we saying, we
Yeah.
recommend you implement one of these, or are we saying we want to study these? If we're asking the latter,
I
I
thought
don't
you
want
were
to ask
going to
permission, I
recommend
just
a
want to
thing.
do it.
I thought you were picking.
What?
I thought you were picking a thing to,
Great,
to,
I'm fine.
to
Yeah,
put
all right,
in there.
that's
Yeah,
fine
so
then.
basically the way it's structured
Sorry.
now, I've just been reading through it because I didn't have a chance to earlier today. But yeah, basically it's structured as that, like, here are the different options we've been considering, and
Good.
then the committee recommends X for this
And-
reason as the best
Okay,
way to move forward for the town.
Thank you.
So we just need to figure out what
Thank
our
you.
recommendations
Yeah,
So
I
are.
apologize.
yeah, so we're saying we've got these 4 different things, the
Mhm.
IECC, electric vehicle, IGCC, and benchmarking.
Yep.
So out of those 4 things, we recommend that the
So-
town do X.
All, one, none.
Yeah.
Everything.
So one of the, if I were on the town board, thank God I'm not anymore, but anyways, if I were on the town board, maybe what might help me in the midst of all this text is one little table that gives sort of the pros and cons of the 4, just really brief, major pros and cons, so that I'd know why you were coming to that recommendation. That's
Mhm.
the only thing I would suggest we add, as well as that text.
Yeah.
What was that?
I'm thinking that, I'll get it.
I just can't read paragraph after freaking paragraph.
Sharon Procopio, JVA. I think, if you're describing the pros and cons, we kind of did that in the presentation that I gave last time. So we have some of that.
That's not, but that was for us.
Right.
I'm talking about a little summary table for them.
Oh, high
In the midst of
level.
this. I'm not talking about for us. I'm
Gotcha.
talking about for them. Because otherwise.
All right, so
So
Lisa, I'll
saying
put
like
some notes on
of
this.
these 4, with each of these 4 proposals,
Yeah.
here's the upside, downside,
Yeah.
each of those,
And
and
then
we're recommending
we're
you
recommending this
do
way.
this way.
Yeah.
I think we could even just create a table in here rather than having all this text and just simplify
Yeah.
it from
That would
lots
sure-
of paragraphs
I
into.
can't deal with all those
Yeah.
paragraphs.
So I'd be happy to put that together if that's helpful.
That would be helpful to me.
Because we could have like, what it is, pros, cons, and other local jurisdictions that are doing
Organized
this.
like that would make me.
So
Yeah.
I think that'd be helpful in terms of putting it into context for them in kind of a easy
And
to
then we can
digest
justify
way.
our, then we
Yeah.
have a shorter way to justify our recommendation instead
Yeah.
of just coming out of,
Yeah.
we analyze it, trust us.
Mhm.
Yep.
So I'll capture that on here. So a table summarizing options, and then pros, cons, and then what else were you thinking, Essie?
Local
Uh,
jurisdictions.
Yeah, so like kind of
local
what other
examples.
areas nearby
Yeah.
are doing this or something similar.
Yes.
Yeah, like pointing out that Lafayette.
Some of that then you can take out of the
Yeah.
text body.
Can't
'cause
let
then-
Fall behind,
ahead
yeah,
of us.
exactly.
We're superior.
Yeah, and even if Boulder did it, don't even mention that Boulder did it, because
Yeah.
that will actually have a negative effect.
Yeah,
I think.
but Lafayette.
Yeah, Lafayette, totally.
Well, I think the
Louisville,
one.
yes.
I think the one other thing to consider is that Boulder just announced that they're going to more than double the number of electric vehicle charging stations at city over the next few years. So that may actually be a competitive advantage if we have more EVSE service equipment, supply equipment
Mhm.
in the area. So that's like the one example where highlighting Boulder's work might actually be
That's fine.
helpful to us.
I was being a little facetious, but not entirely.
No, exactly.
So so I guess maybe this might be a good time to maybe catch up.
So
So if you haven't
maybe
had
our
a chance to
recommended-
look at the cover memo, there's an introduction of what the two-pronged approach is, and then a list of the 4 options that I feel like I've heard you discuss at length over the last few months, and then with some great information that I glommed from some of the information that Sharon has put
Thank
together.
you.
And then just an opportunity here to in that yellow text, add the items that you were just discussing. So the committee's had a chance to assess each of the options and recommends
Okay.
X or Y or Z or a combination. So So
Or
adding a table
something
summarizing the
related to
options and then listing some pros and cons and then local examples. So did you want to try and land on either a priority or a single recommendation? Did you want to look at the feasibility table if you had a chance to do your homework from last month's meeting? Think about some of those options. What would make sense to put in this? So I wanted to at least get it started to have some background so that anybody who's new to this can get caught up. But ultimately, it's going to be the committee's recommendation. So,
So I think the different options we've been discussing are first the upgrading to the new IECC code.
Just do right away.
Yeah, and my inclination is just go ahead and suggest that the town move up to the 2015 code. It's kind of, unclear exactly how big of an impact that's going to have, but I think it's worthwhile, especially with all the building that's going to be going on soon. So I think that, for me at least, would be my highest priority. Another option was electric vehicle and solar infrastructure installation. We're encouraging people to think about that through the voluntary criteria that we're putting together immediately. And I think, it's worth the board considering, especially with other areas nearby rapidly upping the number of EV charging stations. So just from a competitive standpoint, making it kind of open to people with those vehicles, I think that's something that the board should consider. But whether it's voluntary or mandatory, I don't personally care a whole lot. But I think it's just something they should be aware of.
So Essie, can I jump in there? So
yeah, sure.
That would be, so you're thinking of highlighting the EV and solar infrastructure installation as one of the options?
Yeah, I think it's an option that's worth consideration from the board.
Okay.
But I don't think we necessarily need to have a strong recommendation beyond just that they think about it and decide strategically what makes the most sense for the town in terms of making sure that we're still economically viable in terms of all the different construction and building that's going to be going on.
So it's been a while since we looked at the list, but I see the EV and solar are both listed as measures.
Mhm.
Yeah,
they're on the list now. So
exactly.
And
And so since we already have them on the voluntary list, I think we're already pushing towards consideration of those anyway. So I don't necessarily think it needs to, if the voluntary list is actually approved and used by the board, I don't think we need to have a separate mandatory thing necessarily, unless they really want to. But
Quick question. If you're going to push the IECC 2015, is one option that you would make that a piece of that update, since you're already going to have to amend an ordinance?
Well, the ordinance would be amended to adopt the
newest
International
one.
Code Council's document, but what I heard SE summarize was just having an option to include EV and solar.
But not making it
But
mandatory.
not mandatory.
And I think if it's something that the board decides is a priority, then they could certainly add that in with, when they upgrade the IECC into the ordinance. But I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that, but for me at least, it doesn't seem like something that's vital to make mandatory at the moment. So
Okay.
I'd rather focus on what's going to get the most bang for the buck as opposed to just focusing on kind of more seemingly superficial things. So those are the first two. We talked about the International Green Construction Code. I think probably I haven't seen a whole lot of evidence that's going to provide significant benefits over just IECC upgrade. So
And I think the last sentence is the one that will kill it here. 15 cities in the country. No way.
Right,
does this
mostly
town
over 100,000.
try
Yeah,
to be a
exactly.
leading town.
yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
that makes sense for us. And then finally, benchmarking and building performance through Portfolio Manager. Sharon, could you remind us what your thoughts were about how much additional staffing or resources would be required to do something like that?
Yeah, well, so,
anyone?
right, Leah can speak to it too, because you
Okay.
know from what Boulder's doing a lot
That's
more
right.
probably than I do. But I think from my perspective, there is staff involved and there's data analysis. So you are talking about a budget that you would have to create to run a program like that. And it's ongoing and it's annual. So it's not like a
Right.
code enforcement thing that you train one time and, it's an ongoing data collection and management of
And
information.
It's also the new and existing buildings, right? So
Correct.
there's outreach to buildings that are maybe decades old.
But
Yeah.
What if we did it, what if we just required it for all new construction, that they run that model, and the portfolio manager score be put on every new building?
I think
And
that
maybe
makes
we
sense.
phase in for the future, but then we put it on the onus of the the builder also. It's not that much beyond stuff they have to do anyway, and.
You're talking about doing it at time of COO maybe, or?
I can't hear you.
Are you talking about doing it at the time they get their building handed over for operations, that they would.
No, it would be in the plan still.
I guess the confusing thing with benchmarking is you need a year's worth of data, so.
It needs to be occupied, right?
And it
Or
has
used
to be
for employee
occupied,
manager.
so you
Oh,
can't
so
just.
that's a blower door and all that
No,
sort of stuff?
it's not an energy audit, it's really collecting utility use data. So you're getting the
Right.
use data and publicizing it for the building and showing how the building behaves versus how it was maybe designed. You're actually seeing the actual energy use, not just the building code's goal, but the
So what if
actual
we're on
use.
But if we don't go with Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and what if instead we,
You just need to make sure that they're actually
HERS
putting in the
score or
right
something like
data
that, or-
and it's, somewhat transparent.
It's a little bit more complicated because you do have to wait till a building's a year old to really have the data to
For
put
this
into.
you do, I understand, for
Yes.
this incarnation.
For bench-
but
for
there are other
benchmarking.
possible incarnations of benchmarking, so that's what.
Well, and like
Or
there's,
so are you thinking more like LEED certification?
I'm thinking of HERS scores or.
Well, you can.
asset score is a good
Yeah.
example. of
Yeah,
that,
you could
but-
get an asset score, but the goal here was that we were talking about benchmarking buildings'
I
energy
get it.
use
I'm just
predominantly.
trying to figure out something that
You could
might
do when the
be more
building's
feasible.
constructed.
So.
I think one
I
alternative.
like this, and I liked it when they put it in the UK, I'm all for it. But that doesn't mean that that's something, I'd rather do something we can do rather than
Right.
something that's, yeah.
The question is, what's the value out of the HERS score? Once you create that, the building has a score, but it's being operated and maintained. You have a s-
I'm really awful, but I can barely hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm older and I just
Okay.
don't hear as well.
No, so the question is, what value are you getting from requiring a score at new construction? You've got the IECC code, so if you're looking to benchmark that the building is functioning as intended at handover, a HERS score could do that, but the question is, what's the aim? So I would just say, look at what you're.
You're defending this one before I get a chance to sort
No.
of think about or craft what I'm even thinking
No,
about.
I think they're both,
just
I think they're
idea
both good options.
doing it.
I think benchmarking the building at new construction, it's almost a fifth item. They can't fall in the same category.
I
You've
think
got.
one alternative, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I think one alternative might be to consider having voluntary recognition for buildings that decide to do benchmarking, so that we don't have to have excess staffing for the town superior, but we could have some sort of recognition, like a plaque or something, for
Sure.
buildings that do agree to do annual benchmarking.
Or PACE.
And so we can encourage it without having to have a whole lot of additional
I'll trade to Lisa.
Or we can-
resources.
Or any building that's built now has to do it, has to provide that information in a year.
Mhm.
Can I chime in real quick? So Leah
Absolutely.
Yancey, Boulder County. So I think, I just want to respond to the question about resources for, I think, the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So the Partners for a Clean Environment advisors, business sustainability advisors, do actually help businesses with that data entry piece.
Oh, cool.
So actually, and it's free for businesses to do that.
Nice.
And it's small businesses, commercial property managers, tenants, so forth. So I think there could be good synergy where there's a no-cost option to leverage that service for that purpose.
That'd be fantastic.
But there would still be a town, it would still be a
Why would it be
town-led.
a town cost, though? I think it should be a business cost, or building owner cost, not a town cost.
I agree.
That's where I'm coming from. That's kind of where I was coming from, what I was trying to say before. I don't know that we have to have it as a town expense. To me, it's a town requires at least new buildings to do that. We can figure out what we do about older buildings, but at least new
Yep.
buildings.
Yep.
To enforce it. How do you enforce it?
There's an administration.
Because they already have their building operation license. So you can say you're required to do this, but then who makes sure they do?
Yeah.
And you'd probably
And
want to
that
report
takes-
to the
and
board.
Do you know how many buildings we have in this town? You think it takes, like, bodies to tell them, please send in your paper? I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine it's full. I remember the last
Probably
staffing
not
had, it was
full-time.
huge. So
Yeah.
I assume that was because you were assuming that the staffers were going to do these scores, and I think we should look at it a different way. That's where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I think I get where you're coming from, Lisa.
Thank
Just
you.
the way of making it, how do we get people to do it, I guess, operationalizing how to get that data from them, having a carrot or a stick.
Yeah.
Once somebody has a
Mhm.
building and they've received their certificate of occupancy,
Mhm.
I'm wondering what's another leverage point the town would have?
Fine.
Right, and to do the fine, you have to have enforcement. And that's what the ordinance in Boulder did, was create enforcement and manage.
You can just get some clubs and, have the RCAT group run around and enforce the energy benchmarking.
Make my day more interesting.
Exactly. Vigilantes.
So,
No, thanks.
So you're right, Lisa. There could be an option to have a code change that specifically addresses just that aspect of it for buildings built after a certain date to collect and forward certified utility data. Yeah, let me try and figure out some language.
If there's a way we can maybe mandate using, free resources when available to have benchmarking, maybe it's not that vital that we enforce it per se, as much as just kind of like, recognize buildings that are going out of their way to, or building owners that are going out of their way to provide clear, transparent data.
And I think.
And picking something,
I'm
like
all
that
over,
variable.
I'm happy to have them have to hire, consultants or somebody independent, like Pace or something to do it. I think that makes more sense than inexperienced building folks do it, but anyway. I'm not trying to cause a fuss, I'm just trying to say.
Well, it's not a fuss, Lisa.
this
We
is
just
one-
want to try and
I think
find
it's
a
a really
way
important issue, but.
This is one way of doing it, but it's not the only way of doing it, and it's also not the only way, maybe the best way that will get passed. When I saw those staffing numbers, and that's just not gonna fly.
Right.
So what do we come up with that can possibly fly?
So I think potentially like maybe a more of a voluntary approach, which is about recognition as opposed to, might just be easier, but.
Perhaps so few buildings, it might be easier that way, because if there's enough of a small group community feel that peer pressure could work better in this town than in a larger town.
That's true.
This town, there's no peer pressure. This is so not Boulder. I mean, it's so not Boulder that I don't think anybody would be, I don't think peer pressure would work at all. And especially with that developer, there's no
True.
way he would care in the least about what the scores are.
Yeah.
That is not his deal.
Yeah.
He
I was
wants
just
to
gonna-
build homes. He said that the very first quote we ever got from him was, "We're a housing developer."
It looks like my ride is
Anyway.
here.
I was just thinking I was going to
He's
add,
driving away. I'm gonna
Sorry.
keys the other vehicle. I'm like,
I was going to add the green business recognition example that's happening in Lafayette and Louisville. But now I think about it, I don't know if it's pertinent here, but certainly in Lafayette, we saw an increase from about 4 businesses or so participating to 41 in 1 year, and it continues to be really popular, and it's all voluntary. So I just throw that out as another example.
Do you have any information on that to provide in terms of like numbers or something we could provide to the board? You're talking about
So Lafayette and Louisville, both of which are statedly green cities. Lafayette and Louisville both have organics collection and all this kind of stuff. They have green stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We do not have that kind of motivation in this town. The board
Yeah.
has never, except way back, has not been green. So I think
Yeah.
saying Lafayette and
You don't
Louisville is useful, but not really. I mean,
Okay.
Well,
Well, you
I
wouldn't
do
have
think
to
there's
call
an
it that.
Their
opportunity.
main motivation is don't inconvenience the buildings.
Right.
We don't want to be non-competitive compared to Louisville's. We want a business to locate here.
Right.
And we don't want to leave the least bit of inconvenience to a business. And it's very annoying, but that's
Yeah.
what.
And I do think
Yeah,
that
that's
there's an opportunity, especially at the dinner with the town board, to talk about the fact that increasingly sustainability is making areas more competitive. I think it's like 40 of the top corporations in the country now are demanding green rates from their utilities and actually, leaving their utilities for other options that provide them more green power. And it's increasingly becoming kind of like a standard expectation that buildings will be green. And so by not adopting sustainability measures, this Superior could actually become less competitive. And I think that's a point that we should all work to drive home. I think that'd be helpful.
Right. And I'm just trying, I guess I'm coming from can we find a good that's not perfect, but at least it gets us forward? Because
Yeah.
perfect is definitely the enemy of good in this town, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I could come up with a perfect package, but it would get nowhere.
So I guess I'd like to help you. What would make sense to put in this memo, or at least to capture in verbiage or in narrative format, to at least get that needle to move in that direction?
Do you think it makes sense to say their top priority is on moving to 2015 IECC codes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And that we would like to go to a benchmarking program in the we think that's a really big priority in the longer run.
Yeah.
And we'll keep working on it.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Benchmarking is the future, and that's something we want to work towards and put more research into.
Okay, so first, kind of short term, IECC, and then
Yeah.
second,
Mhm.
long term.
Yeah, so I think the goal is to get that one thing moved forward, approved,
Yes.
IECC.
I'm all, that
Absolutely.
makes
Like,
sense
if
to me.
nothing else, we want that,
Right.
Get that covered.
yes.
And we can also justify that in part on the basis that everyone else is doing it already, so we should at least be maintaining the standards set by
And I think also
other
saying,
folks.
like, they're gonna be coming out with 2018, so we should at least be up to
Right,
the
exactly.
one before that, so that we're
Yeah.
not 2 revisions
That's a
behind.
good thing.
Yeah,
I like that.
so I think that that one's really easy to
Yeah.
justify on a number of
Yeah.
different levels. And I think it's gonna be the most important thing.
Yeah.
And then I think encouraging the board as kind of like a third tier thing to think about how they want to deal with electric vehicle charging and solar readiness and stuff. Because I think that's something that increasingly areas are going towards, and from kind of a strategic perspective, if they want to be competitive, it's worth them considering how they want to approach that. But I think the other two things are more important from an immediate perspective.
Well, yeah, and I think having EV and solar in the voluntary builder stuff, and like you said, a lot of companies know that like that's something that their employees want, and so
Right.
it's something you need to put in on your own.
Yeah.
So I heard two things. So I heard required and then I heard voluntary.
No, just have them consider it as whether they want to make it voluntary or mandatory. I don't think we have a strong recommendation either way beyond just that they think about it.
But I think mentioning it's in the pilot or in the
Yeah.
scoring
Yeah.
thing is
Yeah,
the most
exactly.
important thing. And maybe we just say, we'll see how much uptake there is and
Yeah.
That's
what
true.
issues come up about it.
Maybe
Yeah.
it could just be
Come
kind
back
of
on
like
it.
another topic for additional RCAC discussion
Yeah.
per the, depending on the results of the pilot.
Yeah.
Which
That
also
would
implies
make
that the
sense
pilot's
to me.
accepted, which would be helpful.
Yeah.
So let's say,
So-
yeah, we'll watch it, we'll assess it as part of the pilot.
And Essie, I guess that brings up an interesting question. I don't remember what the weighting was on EV and solar in your points, in the points list. The points list?
The waiting for solar and
It
EV
is,
stuff.
well, let me bring it up.
I don't remember actually.
Well, I'm just wondering, if you're saying that you think that's something from the pilot that you really want to have data on to see like how adoption and uptick happens,
Yeah.
make the
Put a higher
points,
point value.
make the points heavier now and see if that actually does attract the developers to pick it more. And
I could be, yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there as an idea, and I thought we did have it fairly high.
Believe
4
so.
points per station.
Yeah, per station, that's pretty good.
Yeah. It was
With
one
a
of the
max
higher
of
ones.
4.
And I wouldn't want to make it too high because
No.
the other ones are
You don't want
more important in
to, you don't
terms
want
of,
them
like,
to do
actual
20
associability.
charging stations, no.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that like we had the points in a way that represent the
Absolutely.
value that you think people will actually adopt in the pilot program. I would hate to
Yeah.
see it not get adopted and.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Cool, thanks.
So in a fortuitous move, those 2 bullet items are in the sustainability measures list, right next to each other.
Yay.
Good job, Nancy.
Hey.
Go us.
Someone
We're internally
organized.
consistent.
2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
So I tried to capture at least the ideas here. So the
Yeah.
first priority of the immediate term is adopting the International
Yeah.
Conservation Code, and then a long-term goal of the committee is to have a modified benchmark format that I just wrote isn't costly.
Well, yeah, I think like looking for a solution that is amenable to all parties, that we like can adopt
Mhm.
some form of benchmarking that might include voluntary data provided by businesses.
Or sort of requirements for new versus a phase-in for older, things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I think
So-
ultimately we want both new and existing buildings.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
we've
Oh,
got
yeah.
so few buildings in Superior. There's no real point otherwise.
2 people
So,
in the
yeah,
benchmarking
exactly.
program.
But yeah, there's no point in letting them, not capturing the new ones right away.
Right, exactly. So,
And putting as much onus on the businesses as possible.
yeah.
Okay, any main point that I missed? So modified benchmark format that isn't costly, workable, voluntary, and then a phase-in for older buildings, I heard?
Maybe say and is workable. So,
Yeah.
because right now it sounds
Isn't
like it isn't
costly.
workable
Isn't
or voluntary.
workable.
Yeah.
Isn't voluntary.
It's not workable.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh,
We're working on
that's
non-feasible suggestions for the board.
We want something no
All
one
the
will
same
like.
thing.
Exactly.
And then the final kind of a longer term goal was to pick out and maybe focus on an area in the pilot program with EV equipment and then solar, but again as voluntary, highlighting that as a focus area from the pilot program.
Mhm. Yeah, so kind of like an ongoing area of focus for us to see if that makes sense or if we have a stronger
Yeah.
Maybe-
recommendation down the
So
road.
maybe
Thing
like
to say-
based,
okay.
based on the response or results of the pilot program, investigate, like doing more research on that for longer term
Yeah.
initiatives.
And I might add at the beginning, we're gonna look at all the results of the pilot program,
Yeah.
but we're gonna particularly look at those things.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely
Yeah.
not the only thing.
We don't care about the rest of it.
Yeah, we just put in the, you know, felt space.
5-page document
Yeah.
for no good reason.
It's too short otherwise.
Would it be fair to
Thanks,
say
Martin.
start out with the EV and solar as a focus through a voluntary, those two variables in the pilot program as voluntary, and then look at it as a long-term focus and potentially for mandatory?
I think like
Just like we
long-term
want to
evaluating
consider
it
Other
Look at
policy
options.
options for it, yes.
to consider the best
I wouldn't use the word
strategic
mandatory
direction.
if we don't have to.
Yeah.
I think that's a word to be avoided.
And honestly, after the town center is built up, then we're not gonna have any more buildings,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be a non-issue
We'll
anyway.
be done.
Yep.
They'll just have to rewire everything.
Yeah, there you go. Mandatory rewiring. Oh god, that sounds awful.
Really expensive.
Level 3 chargers at every corner.
Thanks.
Sure, anything
Thanks so
else
much.
that needs to be in here?
You'll
I think
circulate
we're
some
good.
version of this and we'll.
Well, I guess that's the question. Do you want me to
So
try
Essie
and,
said he
do you want,
would-
or Ness?
will edit the document?
Yeah,
He's
I'm
gonna
happy
do the
to build
pros
a
and
table
cons,
at
yeah.
least.
Okay.
So kind of
Yeah,
And then maybe
taking
send
these
this
four
around,
bullets
you
and
come up
turning
with some
them to
words
a-
for it.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be
Marginally
glad to
pretty
send this
table.
to you
Thank
either
you.
tonight or
Just
tomorrow.
keep it yellow and
Cool.
keep that area in yellow.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so Essie, you'll work
He'll
on a
come up with a
table, and
table.
then
Yep.
the other folks will chime
Happy
in,
to
maybe
put some
maybe
feedback.
take the first, second, and
Cool.
third,
We'll do
and
that.
and put some narrative together.
Yeah.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Anything else? That's everything
So
I had on my
dense.
list.
Not getting it.
I would appreciate it.
Thanks.
Cool, thanks everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yes?
I'm sorry.
Other
sorry.
business?
Just kidding.
I'm sorry, I am just kidding. There was one other item. Mike Henshin was nice enough to forward an email with some of his questions and recommendations, so I
think we
meant
got
to.
to almost all those.
You got to all of those?
Yeah.
Is that-
There was an item, his third item was a question about some language that I used in the staff
Oh, that's right.
recommendation where I understand his question, so if he has a chance, I'll give him a call or if he hears this recording. So I'd like to highlight I guess the difference. So what staff's understanding is that this committee is interested in having the town specifically consider requiring a developer look at all these options. These options within this list, I've heard you consider to be flexible, that it could be water, it could be energy, it could be green roof, it could be anything.
Just come
But
up
the
with some
notion
things.
that they're involved, that a developer is required to do this isn't voluntary. And
Right.
I wanted to make sure I understood that because I understand his question exactly. Because I heard that it would be, that there's flexibility within the list, but the
Mhm.
list is required.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
our,
Yeah,
that's our
exactly.
preference, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
All right, so
understanding as
I'll
well.
reply to
I
Mike
think that
trying
was,
to
yeah,
clarify.
the pilot program is that everybody will do it, but they can choose
Yeah.
from within
Yeah.
it. Okay.
I think the language just might have been a little bit confusing as well in terms of like, you know, exactly what the role is, so maybe just clarification.
Sure, I do that. You've all heard me talk. There's a lot of confusing stuff that comes out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Do some triple negative.
Well, I wrote that it's not costly or workable. You saw that. All right, thank you, everybody.
Sign us up.
Exactly. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Because I can't get myself understood and I get frustrated, so.
No worries. All important points that you brought up, so.
Okay, so we'll see you guys in a week and a half.